The kind of trouble that could possibly alter her life forever, and not in a good way. It had all started in September, 2 months ago. They'd been in the middle of another silent dinner at the 20-seat dining room table. He at one end, reading a stack of daily status reports on his company and emailing his minions on his ever-present BlackBerry. She at the other, doing her geometry homework and texting Lizzie and Hudson, when suddenly he'd said, "Put that away for a second. I'd like to speak with you." She looked up to see his stern face, and a prickly sense of foreboding ran along her skin. The Jurg, as she and her friends called him, had no time for chit-chat. His kind of talk usually fell into 2 categories: announcements and orders. Whatever he had to say sounded like both. "I'd like you to start coming into the office," he said, his brown eyes boring into her like lasers from across the table. 3 days a week, Wednesdays and Fridays after school, and all day on Saturday. We'll start from there." "Come into your office?" Her voice bounced off the wood-paneled walls and floated up to the car-size crystal chandelier. "What for?" The Jurg steepled his hands. "You're my sole heir, Carina. It's time you learned about the world you're going to inherit." That world was Metronome Media, his empire of newspapers, magazines, cable television stations, and social networking websites. He'd started the company with 1 weekly newspaper when he was still at Harvard, and 20 years later, it had become the largest media conglomerate in the Western Hemisphere. 1 in 3 people read a Metronome publication or visited a Metronome-owned website every day. And all of this success had made the Jurg one of the richest men in the world. He owned 5 homes, a collection of vintage Jaguars, a 50-foot yacht, a helicopter, a Gulfstream jet, and a collection of late 20th century art that rivaled the Guggenheim museums. Celebrities, socialites, kings of small countries, and even the president called him on his private line. He'd even toyed with running for mayor once or twice, and then backed out at the last minute, much to Carina's relief. "Dad, I know all about your world," Carina said, looking him straight in the eye. "And I don't want to inherit it." The Jurg gave her a grave stare. "Isn't it a little too soon to know that already? You're 14. You don't know what you want. And honestly, this is better than having you come into the business when you're 22, he said. "By the time you're out of Wharton, you'll be completely prepared." "I'm going to Wharton?" she asked. "You used to love to come into my office when you were a little girl," he continued, slicing into his steak. "Don't you remember, sitting in my chair, pretending to hold a meeting in the conference room?" "I was 8. I liked playing with American Girl dolls, too." "Carina, I was your age when I had my first job," he said, more seriously. "Delivering newspapers. Now, I'm not asking you to have a paper route. What I'm asking is a few hours a week." "But I have other stuff going on," she said, sitting up straight in her chair. "I'm the captain of the JV soccer team this year. Did you know that? And I already signed up for Model UN. And what about going to Montauk on the weekends? What about surfing? What about hanging out with my friends?" Her father put down his fork, and a faint, exasperated sigh escaped his lips. "Carina, soccer and Model UN are extracurriculars," he said. "They're not your future." Before she could respond, the door to the kitchen swung open, and Marco walked in. He was dressed in the khakis and polo shirt that the Jurg made all his help wear, and his sneakers barely made a sound on the wood floor. "You have a phone call, sir," he said in his quiet, deferential voice. "Tokyo." The Jurg took one last sip of his iced tea. He never drank alcohol, and stood up.